Police Benevolent Association, Incorporated versus the School Board of Palm Beach County at 1 p.m. in the boardroom. Ms. Bellata, would you please take the roll?
District 1, Barbara LeQuinn.
Here.
District 2, Alexandria Ayala.
Here.
District 3, Karen Burrow.
Here.
District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marsha Andrews.
Here.
District 7, Edwin Ferguson.
Here.
Thank you, board members. Do we have any disclosures and abstentions? Okay, seeing none, I am convening the impasse hearing in the case of Palm Beach County Police Benevolent Association, Inc. versus the School Board of Palm Beach County, PERC case number SM 2004-006, Special Magistrate Stanley H. Mickelstetter on October 21st, 2024, Superintendent Michael J. Burke filed rejections to Magistrate Mickelstetter's findings and recommendations on behalf of the board. On October 23rd, 2024, Superintendent Burke submitted his recommendations for settling the disputed impasse issues for the board's review, and on November 1st, 2024, the association submitted its recommendations for settling the disputed impasse for the board's review. All submissions by the parties have been received and made part of the record to allow the board to resolve the disputed impasse issues pursuant to Florida Statute 447.403, subsection 4. I will now turn the meeting over to our General Counsel to the board, Sean Bernard, and Ms. Bernard will provide an overview of the hearing. Ms. Bernard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to start with, for the board and for our guests who are here, to give somewhat of a high-level overview of the posture of where we're at. Now that we've had rejections that have been filed by one of the parties, and it's against the special master's recommendations, there is a shift in the legal nature of the governmental entity, in our case, the school board, from that of the public employer to that of the legislative body, which has a duty of impartiality. Once a special master's recommendation has been rejected, the public employer must put on its legislative hat and become neutral, and then act in good faith, act impartially, and consider equally the positions of both parties. The courts have recognized this is awkward, but still required. So with that, the board has received all of the records uploaded to the agenda today and submitted by the parties, which included a letter outlining detailed information regarding the scope and parameters of this impasse hearing today. I will go over where we are procedurally, the board's charge and responsibility in the impasse hearing, and the legal standard for voting. After I go through all of the information, I will then entertain any board questions before we proceed. This case is before the school board for review of the rejections filed by Superintendent Burke, as well as all submissions of recommendations filed by the parties for settling the disputed impasse issues. The superintendent is here today represented by Attorney Jean Marie Middleton and V. Danielle Williams. I have not conferred with counsel substantively regarding this case since the filing of rejections on behalf of the board. The association is here today represented by Katie Mendoza. The special magistrate made the following essential findings and recommendations after the hearing on July 15th, 2024. Permit officers to accumulate up to 60 hours of compensatory time and roll it over into the next year in favor of the PBA. Extra duty pay to be increased to $52.50 or the officer's overtime rate, whichever is higher, with a minimum of 3 hours per assignment in favor of the PBA. Increase Detective Emergency Service Unit and Field Training Officer assignment pay by 5% in favor of the PBA. And add a training unit to the department with a supplement of $1,000 in favor of the PBA. 7.5% reoccurring salary increase in favor of the PBA without a longevity pay plan in favor of the school board. Increase officer West Area supplements by 5% in favor of the PBA. No change to the calculation of the hours worked for overtime pay in favor of the school board. No change to the calculation of hours worked of the overtime pay in favor of the school board. No change to the K-9 caretaker's handler pay in favor of the school board, and no change to the non-contract day compensation in favor of the school board. The superintendent is now before you on 5 rejections, with 1 rejection divided into 2 sub-rejections regarding assignment pay, and is requesting that the school board grant those rejections. The association is asking the board to accept the magistrate's recommendations in total. The board must resolve each disputed impasse issue, the rejected recommendation, as it deems to be in the public interest, including the interest of the public employees involved, pursuant to Florida Statute 47.4034E. Specifying as to each rejected recommendation, the board should either grant or deny the rejected recommendation of the special magistrate in its resolution. The superintendent will be allotted 30 minutes to present his position on the rejected recommendations. The association will be allotted 30 minutes to present its position on the rejected recommendations. There will be no rebuttal, and no time may be reserved for rebuttal. The parties may make their presentations through any representative or representatives of their choosing, including their counsel, and may refer to previously filed materials referenced in the recommendations submitted to the board. Objections raising evidentiary issues need not and should not be made during the hearing because the rules of evidence do not apply. This is not an evidentiary hearing. Accordingly, there will be no direct or cross-examination of witnesses by the parties' representatives. Pursuant to Florida Statute 447.4034C, the parties shall explain their positions with respect to the rejected recommendations of the special magistrate. After each party's presentation in support of their positions on the rejected recommendations, board members will then have 30 minutes to deliberate, including asking questions of the parties or engaging in discussion prior to voting. Board members, you are not required to do so if you have all of the information you need. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the parties? Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent Burke, you now have 30 minutes to present your case, after which the PBA will have 30 minutes to present. Please set the time clock before the start of each slide's presentation. I see we're set. Mr. Burke, you may proceed.
Yes, Ms. Danielle Williams will be representing our side.
Good afternoon, Palm Beach County School Board members. We are here today for the legislative body hearing on the impasse declared by PBA on Articles 17 and 20 of the CBA. PBA declared impasse on March 21st, 2024, after 6 bargaining sessions. The parties were able to resolve several issues through those sessions and additional issues through mediation. However, several still remained unresolved. The bargaining team for the district is comprised of Chief Negotiator Tim Kubrick, Chief Financial Officer Heather Frederick, the Director of Compensation and Employee Information Systems, Mark Mitchell, Chief of Police, Sarah Mooney, the Director of HR and Compliance and Processes, Diane Wyatt, as well as Assistant General Counsel, Jean Marie Middleton, and Senior Attorney V. Danielle Williams. Through discussions with the executive leadership team, the bargaining team determines the needs of the district with regard to staying competitive within the local market as well as the state. What the team has found through these negotiation cycles is that the stalemate that the board will ultimately have to decide on falls on needs versus want. The district bargaining team has consistently negotiated based on the needs of the district and the union to ensure a competitive market position with respect to officer pay, while the PBA has been operating on wants. The school board is chiefly tasked with the education, safety, and welfare of its student population. In order to effectively handle those tasks, the state of Florida provides the school board with a budget to accomplish the goal. There is a single budget for this entire district. This means there is only one income source for all expenditures of the district, which includes more than employee salaries. The district is the largest employer in Palm Beach County and is currently comprised of 3 certified union groups, as well as an additional non-bargaining unit group of employees. PBA accounts for the smallest bargaining unit with approximately 265 employees. However, they routinely want the most from the district. The demand to concede to the wants of PBA is not in the best interest of the school board or the community as a whole. The district proceeded through negotiations on the advice and guidance of the superintendent. The superintendent engaged in negotiation based on the board's recommendations in accordance with its knowledge of the district in its entirety and the public interest. The board was negotiating in good faith through the superintendent. Altering the path taken by the superintendent at this stage will have a negative impact on the bargaining team's position in future negotiations. The district must be fiscally responsible with taxpayer funds. Fiscal responsibility mandates doing what is needed to ensure market competitiveness while also dictating that the district not acquiesce to every want of every union group. Over the last few years, the district has taken steps to increase the competitiveness of officer pay within local regions. In 2022, PBA received a 5% base salary increase. Officers received a take-home vehicle, iPhones, officers received uniform allowances, and an option to switch to 12-month employee status from a 10-month employee status. Additionally, in 2023, PBA received a 7% base salary increase. These changes were necessitated by the reported retention and recruitment difficulties that have largely been eliminated. To maintain a strong foundation, it is important for the superintendent to continue the course of insisting that the board only do what is necessary and not what is wanted. If Mr. Burke were to continue to make concessions as a result of impasse proceedings, there is a risk the district will continually end up in impasse. To avoid this eventuality, it is imperative and incumbent on the board to maintain its position on the issues at hand and keep the bargaining unit strong on a path moving forward. If Mr. Burke were to just adjust his bargaining position for one group, the PBA, it is likely setting a precedent for all union groups, and the board should expect similar outcomes for all other units. This would lead to the depletion of the district's fund balance over time, leaving limited resources to manage the needs of each group effectively. With that in mind, I would like to turn the board's attention to the remaining issues for consideration. The parties have agreed to accept the magistrate's recommendation for one, which is Article 17.1A, work week and overtime, which deals with the calculation of hours worked. Therefore, there will be no change to that. Secondly, we agreed to Article 20.4, non-contract day compensation, so it will increase from $50 to $52.50 per hour. So what goes into determining negotiation posture of each unit? Mr. Kubrick, can you inform the board of that?
Sure. It starts with getting input from the chief and her team. We get a thorough understanding of the areas of concerns that need to be addressed through bargaining. We review market data for wages to see how competitive we are with other agencies, and also the available funds for wage increases and other initiatives that we might want to push. We also look at department status for and trends, such as number of staff, the hiring and turnover records, and so that's how we get started with our proposals for negotiations.
Thank you. So if we look at Article 17.1B through I, we're talking about compensation time provisions. The current CBA language allows for the accumulation of comp time. Each officer has the ability to earn up to 60 hours of comp time. If that time is not used by the end of the fiscal year, the time is paid out to the employee at their overtime rate. Currently, our CTA language, as you see on the slide, indicates that comp time shall not be cumulative from year to year. Ms. Frederick, are you able to talk to the board about comp time? What is comp time? How is it earned?
So comp time is overtime that was worked by the employee, and in lieu of being paid that overtime, it is then accrued as comp time so that they can use it as paid time off in the future.
Are you able to tell the board about how it is tracked?
It's tracked within our ERP, PeopleSoft system.
Okay. Does an employee, how does the employee utilize their comp time?
The employee would elect when they would like to utilize that time that was accrued for paid time off, and so they would request that through their supervisor.
Is there currently a process to allow employees to roll over that comp time?
No, there's not.
Would creating that process look different from what we have now?
Yes, we would have to rewrite the rules within our PeopleSoft system to allow for the rollover of the comp time.
Would creating that process require the district to expend additional funds?
It would, because we would have to rewrite the rules in order to change the system that is set up now.
The PBA is requesting that officers be allowed to elect to either have their comp time rolled over or to be paid out. How would your office manage that election process?
It would be we would have to put a process in place, and it would have to be built as part of the PeopleSoft system. So as part of the rewrite, it would have to be included within rewriting the system.
Thank you. The district is concerned with maintaining equity and fairness amongst its employees, and fears that favoring one union could create resentment and morale problems amongst the others. This could lead to a domino effect of demands for comparable benefits, potentially straining the district's budget and exacerbating labor relations. The district emphasizes that it must consider all bargaining groups when making compensation and benefits decision. Allowing officers only to roll over comp time could lead to service disruption, particularly if officers decide to utilize all hours at once. This disruption potentially could have a larger impact on the district, as we'd have to obtain coverage for the officers throughout outside sources. Further, the district would need to establish mechanisms for accurately tracking the accrued time, the time that's used, the rollover time, and managing cost and budgetary implications. This could involve updates to timekeeping systems, payroll software, and accounting procedures. In addition, PBA would end up being the only unit that would be allowed to roll over their time. How do we explain that to the others? Now we're going to move on to Article 17.11, which is outside detail and extra duty. Chief Mooney, are you able to talk to the board about what an outside duty is and what an extra duty is?
Yes, an outside duty or extra duty detail would be something that is scheduled by an outside contractor. So say a church comes in and rents out school space. They need to have safety and security there. They plan through the lease to contract an officer to work that detail. So it's not affiliated with their day-to-day activities on a campus. It would be additional to what they would normally do.
And is that different from comp time?
It is different.
Is the extra duty or outside duty mandated?
It is not. It's voluntary.
Currently, the rate of pay for an outside duty is $50. We've agreed to increase that rate to $52.50 per hour with a minimum of 3 hours per assignment. PBA is requesting that the officer be allotted $52.50 or their current overtime rate. Do you support that this is the change?
I support the 3-hour minimum mandatory because that's kind of the industry standard, but the flat rate is also the industry standard, so that it would be equitable for any officer to work and they'd get compensated at the same rate.
Is every officer's overtime rate the same?
No, but if it's a detail lease rate, then yes, it is. So it's the same if it's a voluntary sign-up as opposed to a mandatory detail.
Thank you. Mr. Kubrick, if the PBA is successful in convincing the board to accept the individual officer's overtime rate, could you tell the board who would be responsible for paying the difference of that $52.50 and that officer's overtime rate?
Most likely that would be the district. The overtime rates of the officers vary, so it's difficult to account for, what that will be when establishing the lease rate for security.
Why would the district be responsible for absorbing those costs?
The current leases, there are fixed rates in the lease agreements for security. So if overtime rates are used, the rate actually paid will often be beyond what is collected at the current rates, and the district would need to pay the difference.
Is there a time frame for when those rates could increase?
The contract that we're currently under expires on June 30th, 2025.
What do you believe would happen if the increased rates are passed on to the lessee?
In order to cover the overtime rate, we'd have to pass a significant amount onto the lessee. This could push them to find other venues, which would ultimately result in a loss of revenue for the schools and even potentially for the officers.
Ms. Frederick, are you able to tell the board whether there are officers who currently earn more than $52.50 for their overtime rates?
Yes, there are currently 85 officers that make over that amount.
If the district were to lose out on leases as a result of the uncertainty of those rates, would that have an impact on the district's budget?
The primary impact would be at the school, because we do allow the schools to maintain that funding to help support activities at the school sites.
So if rates are changed, our schools will not know what their income is going to be, and it will be different for school to school. Now I want to focus our attention on Article 20. We're talking about Article 20.3, which is our assignment pay. PBA agrees that there should be no change to the K-9 supplement. Therefore, the remaining supplements left to be addressed in the assignment pay are for the detectives, the emergency services unit, and field training officers. The district proposes that the assignment pay remain the same, while the PBA requested to increase each supplement by $1,000, which amounted to a 25% increase to the detective and field training officer supplements, nearly a 36% increase to the emergency services supplement, and a new training unit. The magistrate has recommended that the district provide a 5% increase to the aforementioned supplements. While this 5% is a drastic cut to the requested 25 to 36% increases, at this time, the priority of the district is to improve salaries for its employees rather than providing supplements. The district rejects creating a training unit altogether. Chief Mooney, can you provide the board with the rationale for why the district has taken the position to increase salaries versus supplements?
For the consistency and the continuity amongst all of the employees, having a specialized assignment sometimes has extra things that come with it anyway, and the pay is not necessarily the impetus to join one of the specialized units. So to just add incremental supplements in those various units would potentially only benefit one or two people. And it's just not consistent throughout the organization.
Thank you. So I'd like to turn our attention to Article 20.9, which is our West Area Supplement. Chief Mooney, can you tell the board whether when you became chief of police, did officers have take-home vehicles?
Some of them did, but at this point, the school board has supported us in outfitting all of our officers with take-home vehicles at this point, and they pay for the use of those vehicles in addition to gas.
Does that mean that officers are no longer required to use their own personal vehicles to their workstations?
Correct. They drive marked police units.
Does it also mean that officers are not financially responsible for filling their gas tanks?
Correct. That's provided for them by the district also.
Is this a benefit for all other employees in the district?
No, it's a benefit for the police officers.
So PBA asserts that the proposed language that it provides should be accepted, as these schools are not desired positions, and the rates will match between the bargaining units. The supplement in the Glades area is not to entice employees to work at undesirable schools. It is to compensate them for the travel and the wear and tear on their vehicles to serve the students in our county. To argue that officers who are already getting a take-home vehicle and gas cards need more money because being in the West area, a predominantly African-American area, is less desirable is offensive. They can opt out. They can choose not to elect to have that position. Teachers have to drive their own personal vehicle. They have to buy their own gas. And so we are compensating them for the wear and tear to their vehicles. Now we're going to turn your attention to 20.5. This is by far the largest issue of contention for this hearing. During the last negotiation cycle with PBA, the district agreed after impasse to provide a 7% increase. That raise was 100% paid out of the referendum money. The district offers competitive salaries amongst other school districts in Florida who have their own accredited law enforcement departments. If the board accepts the recommended 5% increase that was proposed by the district at the time of the hearing, the district would have been in the second highest in the county for the hourly rate of officers. While the PBA argues that other agencies offer step plans, longevity pay, and a more generous leave policy, we are not funded in the same way. The magistrate seemed to acknowledge this because he didn't recommend that we take any of those steps. The district's current starting salary for a 10-month officer is $51,328, while 12-month officers start at $64,160. Currently, the lowest paid 10-month officer earns $52,867.84, while the lowest paid 12-month employee earns $64,160 as a base salary. The current pay range, you can see, is 3208, minimum to 5483, which is our maximum. With a proposed 5% increase, the rates would increase to a range of 3368 to 5757. The PBA requests that this board accept the magistrate's recommendation for a 7.5% increase, which would take that range to 34.49, minimum to 5894. While the difference in these ranges proposed by the two parties are 81 cents to $1.37 an hour, that increase across this bargaining unit is still significant. Chief Mooney, are you able to talk to the board about whether that 5% proposal is sufficient for your department?
At the time that we entered into negotiations, yes, it was very consistent with keeping us in the higher bracket of local agencies, in addition to statewide comparatively to other school police departments. Obviously, during the time period, other negotiations occur. Some of the other local jurisdictions have multi-year contracts, which would lead it to look like their raises are much higher than what we're getting in a one-year contract. So I think at the time that we began these negotiations, the 5% was very generous and fair.
And we began these negotiations at the beginning of 2024.
Yes.
Is that right? And so now we're at the end of 2024, and these numbers might look a little bit different. In your opinion, is the requested 7.5% increase necessary for the stability of your department?
At this point, I think the 5% is adequate. And like I said, moving forward, as we renegotiate and we open it up every year in regard to salaries, we have room for growth there. But I think at the time that we began these negotiations, that the 7.5% was not mandatory in order to keep our heads above water, basically.
So it's fair to say that it's appropriate now with the understanding that we are going to move into 2025 and begin negotiating for the next cycle.
Correct.
Mr. Mitchell, how does the district determine market competitiveness and its position within the region?
The district seeks to look at agencies that are comparative to this organization, as well as those organizations where we compete for talent. So on the previous two slides, you saw those two market comparisons versus agencies that have a certified police agency with them. You also saw the comparisons to local municipalities and other agencies where it's deemed we can compete for talent.
Do you know the average salary of a 10-month employee?
Yes,
What is that average salary?
71,000, let's see, 12-month employee? Or did you say 10-month employee?
12-month.
12-month employee is 103,847 for school police.
And do you know the average salary for a 10-month school police officer?
71,912.
Is that inclusive of overtime?
Yes.
Do you know how many officers earn more than $100,000 per year inclusive of overtime?
49.
Do you know if there are any officers who earn between $90,000 and $100,000 inclusive of overtime?
I do not have that data at this time.
Okay. Ms. Frederick, are you able to tell the board how much the district has paid out in overtime in 2023?
Approximately 2.3 million.
And is this just to PBA?
Yes.
As of March 28, 2024, how much did the district pay out just to PBA in overtime alone?
Approximately 2 million, 1.9.
Are there any officers currently who earn more than $50,000 a year in overtime alone?
Yes, there are.
Are teachers permitted to earn this kind of money in overtime?
No, they are not.
Ms. Frederick, can you talk to the board about what a 1% increase to the salaries of an officer will cost the district?
It's approximately $290,000 for each 1% increase,
And so a 5% increase would be what?
about 1.5 million.
And a 7.5% increase would be?
Approximately 2 million, 2.2 million.
So the difference between those two figures is about $727,000?
Correct.
If the referendum that has been a contention during the entire negotiation process does not pass again in 2026, will that have an impact on the district's budget?
Yes, it would be a loss of revenue of over $300 million a year.
If the board accepts the 5% salary increase, would it be retroactive?
It would be
Do you know when it's retroactive to?
to January 1st of 2024.
Okay. So if this agreement is ratified by December 31st of this year, would an officer receive a retroactive check back until the beginning of the year?
Yes,
Would they also receive the 3% bonus that we have proposed?
yes, they would.
Does the state assist the district in funding for officers per school?
They do.
Can you talk to the board about how that is funded?
So there is a Safe Schools allocation, but that does not fully fund the cost of the one officer per school. So that is supplemented by the district general fund, and then the officers over and above that one officer required by school, by statute, is funded through the referendum.
Is the district able to generate additional funds like another municipality might be able to do so?
Our ability to generate funds is only through the going to the voters for the millage, which is capped, as well as the sales tax, which was recently approved last night.
Thank you. As you've heard, there's one pot of money to handle all of the district's financial responsibilities. Out of the money provided to the district from all revenue sources, the district must allocate funds to charter schools, voucher funding to provided for private school students through family empowerment scholarships, and consequently, after accounting for charter schools, voucher programs, employee retirement costs, and state mandated categoricals, the remaining funds we have are used for salaries and reserves. The district's priority is educating its students, and it must consider all employee groups during negotiations. The bargaining team was focused on the fairness and equity to all employee groups. When the board considers the request of the PBA for an extra 2.5%, it should consider the impact that it would have on all other employee groups, which are 23,000 employees. Ms. Frederick, can you tell the board what the cost of a 1% increase is across all employees?
$3.5 million. I mean, 13.5, sorry.
A 1% increase is $13.5 million for all of our employees. In closing, the superintendent requests the board to do the following: accept the recommendation to Article 17.1A, no change; reject the recommendation that comp time be allowed to be carried over until the next year; accept in part and deny in part Article 17.11. So we accept that the rate be increased to $52.50 with a minimum of 3 hours, but we reject that the pay be at the officer's overtime rate. We reject the recommendation to increase assignment pay under 20.3. We accept the recommendation to no change to K-9 caretaker handler recommendation. We reject the recommendation to establish a new training unit. We would like the board to accept the increase to $52.50 per hour under Article 20.4, non-contract day compensation. We urge the board to reject Article 20.5's recommendation for a 7.5% increase to the minimum and maximum salary schedule in all officers effective back to January 1, 2024. And we request the board reject Article 20.9 requests for an increase in the West Area Supplement. The decision the board makes today will have a lasting ripple effect on the entire community that is Team Palm Beach. The ramifications of the decision today will have implications across all 23,000 employees. While it may be 265 employees in PBA, the consequence of the decision you make today will span across all of your employees. This impasse relates only to 2024. We have not even begun negotiations with PBA for 25. The mission of Palm Beach County School Board has been to educate, affirm, and inspire. While the education of students of Palm Beach County may continue, what are we talking about for our other employee groups that make up the entire district? Each and every one of our employee groups within the district is equally important and must be treated as such. If the board opts to provide a 7.5% increase, it will send the message to other employee groups that the PBA is the favorite. While the board will continue to educate its students, it risks negating the work done to affirm and inspire all employees and creating a financially unstable and inequitable system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for staying within the time limit. We have the clock is reset. I'll now turn the hearing over to Attorney Mendoza.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katie Mendoza. I'm an attorney with the Palm Beach County PBA. I'm the main negotiator for our bargaining unit of officers and sergeants at the school police department. So according to the last records request, there were about 233 officers and sergeants in our unit. They are the smallest unit. They're the only unit of high-risk employees here at the district. And the Palm Beach County PBA, just as an overview, represents almost every police department in Palm Beach and Martin County, including the Palm Beach County and Martin County Sheriff's Office. So our president, Mr. Kazanjian, he's the president of not only the Palm Beach County PBA, but the Florida PBA, and that really gives us good insight into the market standards and trends, because you are hiring from the same pool of other law enforcement officers in the county. And Chapter 447 says you need to look at that local market and the peculiarities of the job. So that's two of the factors that we looked at the hearing. And I just kind of want to give an overview of everything that's been going on at the PD. I've been the negotiator since 2020. So we represent the school police unit. Again, that's officers and sergeants. In 2020, we started making some good changes. There have been really positive things happening. We've worked on a contractual promotional process. That's been very good. It's starting to be followed. But there's still a lot of work to do and a lot of changes that need to be made to make the school police department as strong as it needs to be for our children. So as you all know, in 2018, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas tragedy occurred, and then after that, there were a bunch of law changes. They did require the school police department to increase the staffing. So you are looking at one officer basically per school, and you're gonna hear from a lot of our officers today that they're still really struggling to even meet minimum staffing requirements. So in 2020, the department was in a state of chaos. In 2022, the membership came to us, the PBA. This is not something we started. They came to us. That's when there was merger talk. They really said, we need better support, we need better pay, we need better benefits. We had a meeting at the Union Hall. There was an overwhelming vote in favor of the merger. Almost every single officer voted in favor of the merger. Just in 2022, that was over 100 people. Also in 2022, the superintendent and the board, you guys made a great decision by hiring Chief Mooney. She's great. But that was after having 5 chiefs in 5 years. So you guys are the ones who have to decide today what's needed to really keep going this momentum to build your police department up. Also in 2022, we talked about the referendum. It was briefly touched on here, but as you all know, there's a 4-year referendum to impose a $1 mil extra on property taxes, and that's for 5 categories of things. 2 of them are presented to the public for school police and school safety. We wrote a letter to Mr. Burke. We did not receive a response to use that for improved officer pay, just like it's used for the teachers. That didn't happen. In 2023, we had bargaining for reopeners. We did declare impasse in 2023. We went through a 2-day evidentiary hearing. I think it was good to see where we were as a police department. So in 2023, the hearing revealed that you were 100 officers shy of full staffing, which is 315 officers. In 2023, starting pay for 10-monthers was around $49,000, and the PD had lost 50 officers in 1 year. That's just what that hearing just last year showed. So that's 20% of your staffing. And the 2023 budget had increased by $215 million. And the referendum funds alone had increased by over $50 million. So we got a really favorable recommendation from that impartial magistrate, which was for 7%, no bonus. The district did accept that. That was something that was really needed, and thank you, because I think it did strengthen the department, but you're still down in your staffing, and we would like to keep this momentum up. So fast forward to this year, 2024, we're again dealing with the two main fiscal articles, and I know there's a lot of talk about the units across the board, but again, it's your smallest unit, it's your only high-risk unit, and the CBAs are not identical. So the police CBA, Articles 17 and 20, are summarized in our letter to the board. We want to be fair. That's why we recommended to accept the magistrate's recommendation in whole. And Danielle went through each item, but I just want to touch on them. So no change in the overtime calculation. The magistrate did note that that was the industry standard, but he said basically we need to focus on base wages. So no change there, that's fine, we accept that. The next item is comp time. So compensatory time, that's a staple across law enforcement departments. If you don't get paid for your overtime, which is time worked, then you get comp time. So we're not asking for an increase in the comp time. Right now in the contract, it's 60 hours. That's actually 40 hours at the 1.5 times rate. So we're not asking for an increase. We just want that to be able to be rolled over because right now 10-monthers have no annual leave. They have 6 personal days, which is taken from their sick leave bank. And we just think, as the magistrate recommended, that the use of the compensatory time, which they earn by working, is a good incentive. And we did talk about the programming issues at bargaining. And I just think that we're willing to work with you all, but what we hear is it's just too much work, and it's not fair across the units. But I just think that something can be done about that, maybe even manually inputting since it is the smallest unit. So that's where we are with that. Extra duty detail. This is something I think that you all maybe should talk about, maybe with the chief in your discussion time, because I think there's confusion amongst the terms extra duty versus non-contract versus overtime. There's a lot of different terms used in the CBA, and extra duty is actually, I talked to all the reps about it very recently, they are paid at the overtime rate right now for their extra duty. That's like if you stay at a school and work a football game, they receive the overtime rate. That's extra duty. So maybe we just need to strike that language overall because it's confusing. I don't think we even need the term extra duty. It's regular overtime that they get paid for right now. Salary plan, so 20.3 assignment pay. The magistrate recommended 5%. I think that the district did accept a $1,000 increase to detective at the hearing. I didn't want to put that in my letter. I don't know if you're withdrawing that. So again, maybe that's something we can talk about. But the magistrate recommended 5%, so we did accept that. And we're looking at increases $200 or less for basically 3 items. There's trainers right now, they just don't receive assignment pay. So that's for that item. Very, very minimal increases. Non-contract day compensation, fine. We're going with the magistrate's recommendation, status quo. And then the wages, I'll talk more about that. That's 7.5%. Again, very needed for, to meet your minimum staffing. And I'll touch on the market standards after all this. West area supplement, any implication whatsoever that's based on race is ridiculous. It's far. People don't like to drive it. That's why we recommended an increase, and 5% is $150 to, just over $250. So again, minimal increases based on what the magistrate recommended. Starting pay, I know it was put on the PowerPoint. I think the 10-month salary was incorrect. Right now, starting pay at the school PD for 10-monthers, that was a good change too. You now have 12 and 10-monthers. That's great. I think it's helped a lot with the coverage issues. But again, we still need to keep working on pay. So 10-month now starts at $51,328. 12-monthers start at $64,160. We're here arguing about the district's proposing 5%, or a 3% bonus or $1,500, whichever is greater. We want the 7.5% to the base, no bonus. We're basically arguing over 2.5%, and it's just whether or not it's pensionable. You know, they're trying to avoid pensionable benefits to the base. We don't want a bonus. We want to keep building up the starting pay, making it more competitive with the community. We're not asking for a step plan, nothing like that. We just want to attack that base starting pay and give good base wage increases to our men and women who work to protect the students and the staff every single day. I think it's a lot of people. So the difference of that between 2.5%, 5 and 7.5, is less than $2,000 annually, and it's the minimum hourly rate. It's around 81 cents. That's what we're arguing about here today. And I did a records request. The last records request we got of the officers, basically it said that it would cost around $375,000 for the raise difference in what we're arguing. I know that they have to think about the FRS and the costs. I think that's included in what Heather said, around $500,000 with the pensionable benefits. But again, that's one of the main draws that you have, FRS and the pensionable benefits. You shouldn't have to give them bonuses to avoid that benefit when that's one of the great things that you have. When you look at funds, the district admitted in its brief after the hearing that it has the funds available. It can't afford it. It just does not want to give police a higher raise than the non-instructional civilian employees. And the reason I say non-instructional is because they are treated differently than the teachers. We, agree everyone does a great job, but you have to look at what all of the employees are doing and getting. The referendum funds, which right now is 2022 to 2026, the language presented to the Palm Beach County voters is for an extra mill in property taxes to fund 5 different categories, 2 of which are school police, school safety. Those referendum funds went up $43.7 million as of 2024. Between 2023 and 2024, those referendum funds alone went up $93 million. And we're arguing over 2.5% to the base, and you're still understaffed. So I think that the voters think that these funds are being used to focus on school safety, which I would hope and I know is a priority for everyone, but we're here arguing over the 2.5% to the base. So again, that's what we're looking at. We did a records request for all the teachers who received the referendum supplements for one fiscal year. As you know, they can receive up to $10,000, which is pensionable. And we got back a big list of names. These are all the teachers who receive referendum supplements, up to $10,000. And it's $87.7 million expended towards these pensionable supplements for 1 year for 12,000 teachers. We're just asking for a little bit higher of a base wage increase in starting pay for our police. So market trends, other agencies have step plans, longevity, more leave, less duty days. They have comp time. They have comp time almost up to, over 200 hours. I represent Boynton. They are allowed to roll over 195 hours. So again, you looked at the district's wage comparison charts. It didn't include the referendum supplements. I think it showed you guys over Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. That's not accurate. They have a higher hourly rate. In 3 years, they're going to be starting at $84,000 around there annually. So I just urge you, also, we're at another impasse right now over insurance. You guys are proposing to increase monthly costs about $100 a month per employee. Now it's over 2 years, but that's another reason why a good base wage increase is needed. The district, you also saw a chart of other district police departments. They're not all fully accredited. You have a fully accredited police department, a great chief. You need to give her the tools that she needs to make it a strong police department. Chief Mooney, she's great. She has a great reputation. I hope you did read the transcript of the hearing. She talks about a lot of the positive changes, but she also talks about you are still 50 to 60 officers down, 315 fully staffed. You're just past the hump of panic mode every day. Everyone knows it. So I hope you address this need in the base wage increase. At 260, I think that was the number she gave. You should be at 315. That's 55 officers down. So you're going to hear from a lot of our officers and sergeants. I'm not going to take up much more time, and they're going to talk about their experiences, what they see, what they go through, and why they do deserve a bit better base wage increase. Thank you. I'm going to call, Sergeant Dave Furtado.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm getting the age where I need glasses, so bear with me. Good to see some of you, or all of you actually, but some of you are familiar faces. My name is David Furtado. I'm a sergeant with the Palm Beach County School Police. I've been here for 23 years. I started in 2002. Spent a lot of time in this boardroom with quite a few of you, and there's some new faces now who I'm not familiar with, but I'm sure we'll be seeing you through the years. The reason I'm here is just to talk about some things that we're dealing with as an agency, and I think I can speak from experience as to why we're here. I was listening, so it kind of changed what I have written down and what I want to address, but we have one to two police officers per school, and you know, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas changed that. We had to put a police officer in every school. So we have one person on that campus every year that's responsible for one thing. Now, some of you have actually come to some of our events, and you've let us know how important safety and security is. I have 3 children. They're all older now, but I tell you, when they went off to school, I want to know that they were coming back. So when I said goodbye to my children, I gave them a kiss goodbye. I said, hey, you know, I was really concerned about their education. But more importantly than that, I wanted to make sure that they were going to come home unharmed and safe, and that things in the school were going to be good. You have one person on that campus who's responsible for that ultimately. Now, I know administration, everybody else is responsible as well, but that one police officer needs to be somebody significant. When we hire new hires, I'm in the training unit. When we hire new hires, we let them know your job is to be that warrior. You're that one person. And we show videos of unfortunate events that have happened in the past and are happening a little more often, unfortunately, and what their responsibility is. Make no doubt what that responsibility is. And I want protecting my child, that warrior. I don't want the least that money can buy. I don't want, you know, what average money can buy. I want the best. We should be the department that everybody is seeking to be at. And you should want that person protecting your children, your most valuable asset. And they're not property, but the most valuable thing too. If you have children, you know what I'm talking about. When I started in 2002, starting pay was $38,000. Right now, starting pay comparable to the schedule we were on is $52,800. That's a 70% increase in 22 years. Okay, that's not bad. I bought a house that same year. House was $132,500 in Palm Beach County. I don't live there anymore, but I looked up the value of that house. The value of that house is $500,000. That's a 370% increase. Okay, I'm okay. I'm fine. I've been here, I've lived in this county, but we've got a lot of new officers and people coming in who are trying to start families with young people, and that's a significant difference. Cost of eggs has gone up 300% since then. Cost of gas is up over 200%. Cost of bread, I could go down a whole long, but we all can agree that the cost of living in Palm Beach County is significantly up. Now, what are we trying to accomplish? I was there when you all went and tried to get the referendum money for Palm Beach County School District. And absolutely, you guys need that. You need that assistance to pay the teachers. It was safety, it was security. And oh yeah, we're gonna give the teachers some raises. I remember asking the chief at the time, are we gonna get the raises too? Because things were getting a little expensive. And he said, no, you guys have to bargain for that. So the teachers got it. What were you trying to accomplish? You're trying to make it more affordable for the teachers. I get it, absolutely. But I just listened to the district representative talk about fairness and equity in all bargaining units. And when you offered that money to the teachers, up to $10,000, all the other bargaining units noticed that, and they felt left out. Now, last year, we did go to impasse, and the reason was because we live in this county, too. We have most of our people that we're hiring now are coming from Port St. Lucie and other places where they can afford. They're making that hour-long drive, whatever. So it is significant, and we're just trying to feed our families, just like everybody. And I know you understand that. So just to be comparable to what the teachers are making, Teachers work 196 days a year, and we have a 206 and a 250 schedule. So if you were to pay the police officers, now let me find this in my notes because I have it. The equivalent would be $50,250 if we worked the 196 schedule for the teachers. Now, I don't know what the teacher's starting salary is, but I think it's somewhere $53,000, $54,000. So we would fall short if we worked a 196-day schedule. We also talk about overtime. Okay, I'll ask you, they said 49 people are making over $100,000. But if you're going to compare starting, first of all, I think the salaries that you're comparing are all starting salaries, because if you compare a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, and 20-year officer, I think we start to miss the mark here at the school district. Okay, because I can tell you my brothers in blue and green at other agencies who have as many years as I went through the academy, they're making significantly more. That's okay with me, because I like where I'm at. I love working here. I love protecting the kids. I love seeing you guys and working with you. Everybody's a professional. Again, we're just trying to make sense of all this. But when we talk about overtime, that's time away from our families. That's our police officers trying to feed our families. Okay? The teachers don't have to worry about it. I'm married to a teacher, so I'm not going to sit here and complain, but I think they get everything they deserve. Okay? Now, I know also their overtime, my wife says when she goes to tutor somebody, I'm going to work my overtime, but they make $60 to $70 an hour, so there is opportunity for them. They just have to do it in a different way. They have the entire summers off. They have more time off than we do. Okay, again, 196 days compared to 250 or 206. But yes, overtime is afforded to us because we're needed there. And if we weren't there, the sheriff's office or somebody else would be there, and you'd probably be paying them a significant amount of money. But that's time away from our hours. So all that extra money that's being paid, those are hours that these police officers are being away from their families, and unfortunately, it leads to unfortunate things. Children who don't see their parents, hardships on marriage, different things. So we're all trying to accomplish similar things. I know I'm getting a little long, but we do have a police officer, just to put it in perspective. I'm not going to give her name or anything, but she recently came to us from another agency. She's a single mom. She gets up probably about 4 o'clock in the morning so that she can drive her child to her mother's place so that her child can get to school. She goes to work. She works a full day. Sometimes she does work overtime. At the end of the day, she goes back to pick up her child, and she's getting home late at night. Now, I understand they say, oh, we make overtime, but the teachers go to work and we say, hey, let's give them some referendum money so that they can survive. But the police officers, you get overtime. So you know what? What are we going to tell this officer? Don't spend time with your son. Don't even see him, because you go make the extra overtime because it's afforded to you. That's what she's doing. But, I don't know if that's the answer. So we're just asking for something fair. This is, again, you guys tell us all the time how valuable you are. But, I think they say actions speak louder than words. We love to hear it. But you know what? It'd be a great time to show it, wouldn't it? So 7% and 3 is what you gave the teachers this year. I think that's fair. I know that they said 7.5, but I'm going to come back to 7 and 3, because that's what was again. I'm going to go right back to where we were talking about fairness and equity. Okay, the reason we were in impasse last year and we got the 7% was because of the referendum money, just to bring us up to speed. Now the teachers got 7 and 3 this year. We said, hey, how about us? I think if that was offered, we wouldn't be here today. We're 10, 11 months into this now. And the police officers are waiting. So I'll go ahead and cut it off. I'm going to let somebody else speak. I apologize, but thanks for listening to us, and thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it. Good to see you guys. Sorry.
He's tall. I'm going to call Officer Michael Lynch.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. I want to introduce myself. My name is Officer Michael Lynch. I've been with the school district for approximately 7.5 years. I spent 2 years at Bear Lakes Middle School and the last 5.5 years at Santa Lucia's. I've been in law enforcement for approximately 38 years, and I want to say the last 7.5 have been the most rewarding. But with that being said, it's getting more and more challenging coming into school every day and what is occurring throughout our schools. From conversations I have with my fellow officers, violence is on an upswing and their workload is doubled. Example, several guns have been taken off campuses this year. Just last week, I took a gun from an individual just off my campus who was firing it in the area. That was probably my 4th gun since I've been here. I took an AK-47 off or AR-15 off an individual at Bear Lakes who was on campus with it. We handle everything in our schools, from rapes to thefts to robberies to sexual molestations, sex crimes. Everything we do is with the exception of homicide since I've been here. The chief's making every effort to meet the state mandates of one officer in every school, but we are still struggling. The morale is slowly dipping. These issues will only continue our problems of retaining and recruiting. The days of bumping fists and patting kids on the head is over. We are understaffed and it is showing. There are many reasons for the manpower shortage, but I believe first and foremost it's the lack of respect we are shown from the district. We believe that you look at us as a burden on your party and you feel like the only reason we are here is because we are mandated. I believe that with this thinking, you are also putting the safety of your students, staffs, and schools at risk. We have to be more competitive within the law enforcement community. We have to stand out in a way people are going to want to come here. Law enforcement officers want to see that they are respected and valued by their boards, you folks, not just an old piece of equipment you were keeping around in case you need it. We all understand that schools are meant for education and that is your main priority. Most of us have had children go through or are currently going through the Palm Beach County school system. But in this day and age, things have changed. Without us at the schools, they cannot operate. If my children were still school age, I would want the most competent teachers as well as law enforcement in those schools to educate and protect. Please show us your support of being here, us being here, and accept the magistrate's impartial decision. Thank you for your time. And just off the record, I want to get out of the soapbox here for a minute. I find it very offensive that your attorney would use this platform for a political stunt. The stipend was never here for an increase. I mean, for demographics, it was for distance of getting out to the glades. I work in 7.5 years here. I've worked in schools that are probably 98 to 99% black and brown children by my choice. I've been at every single one of these negotiations in the last 5 years, and not once has demographics been brought up. So I just want to make sure that that's for the record. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Sergeant Carol Session.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Carol Session. I'm a PBA representative, and I've been a school police officer for 21 years. I look forward to serving more. Currently, I'm a sector supervisor in the North End. I can tell you that on a daily basis, it is a struggle to be in compliance with the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act. This struggle is due to manpower shortages. I know the district has been struggling, and they've been diligently trying to address the issue by hiring additional officers. But it will be a difficult task to attract officers when the pay is not comparable to that of our counterparts. As a police representative, I can appreciate the dynamics involved with negotiations for better wages. And I understand the district has other concerns that they must also address. However, I truly believe that when it comes to security, we cannot put a price tag on safety. If we are to meet the goals established by our agency and district, it is imperative that the salaries of our officers are sufficient enough to attract the talent that is needed. Thank you.
I just want to say, because I think we're going to run out of time, I appreciate you having us all here today and listening to all this. I just want to highlight that overtime is actually hours worked. If you didn't fill it with your own officers and sergeants, you would have to use the contract deputies, and those are at even higher rates. So now I'm going to have Officer Joe Lapau talk. He handles recruitment.
Hi, Officer Joe Lapau. School district has more population during the day than our state capital of Tallahassee, which is the largest city in Florida. Florida police departments have become highly competitive. They offer a step scale besides contract pay raises, cost of living yearly increases, and a higher starting salaries for experienced officers. These are not new ideas. These have been in place for decades, but now it's on a much higher pay scale. I have worked with recruiters from other departments, which they get officers that appeal to our schedule. They refer to me. When I get officers that have concerns about no step plan, no COLA, work in another agency becomes appealing. New officers starting their career tend to use the school police as a stepping stone. This is the reason why we don't offer a police academy sponsorship program. They soon realize that there are several years of experience here, that they go on to other agencies, work 25 years, and retire a millionaire. Here, the starting salary, which you guys brought up before, is $52,000 ballpark for a new officer. I'm here just over 6 years, and my base salary is $55,002. I look at it every time I look at my pay stub. These are the reasons why we're short 50 to 75 officers. These are the reasons why we contract other officers from other departments to cover our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Mendoza. Can you please wrap it up?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Joe. So I don't want to keep any more of your time. Thank you so much. I just want to highlight again, the district admitted it has the funding. It's a matter of can, versus won't. So I really hope that you consider the 7.5% raise to the base that's pensionable. Thank you.
Thank you. So now, before we go into our deliberations, Ms. Bernard, do you want to respond to the comments made directly towards you?
As far as council's comments, I think that
This would be from Officer Lynch.
Oh, thank you. From Officer Lynch, certainly there was no disrespect on the part of the attorneys in my office or me, certainly. I think that the reference was solely based on testimony that came out or inferences that were made about the undesirability of the area. And so I understand that to be a specific reference that came out from below. So please, apologies if you took offense to that.
Okay, thank you. So the board will now go into deliberations for 30 minutes where it may ask questions or make any comments. Please use your pads if you would like to make any comments or ask any questions. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Ms. Bernard. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Got to have faster fingers. I'm sorry. We're going to go with Mr. Ferguson first.
Thank you. Attorney Bernard, who do I direct the questions to? I can direct it to each party?
My recommendation would be to direct any questions through council, and if you need, to speak to representatives who are here today, the best way to pursue that is through council.
Okay. So my first question would be to Attorney Mendoza. There was, during the district's presentation, they mentioned that PBA sought a 7.5% increase in 2023. And I thought I may have heard that there was also a similar amount of increase in 2022. Am I correct or incorrect in that?
No, I don't know if this is on, but in 2022, I think that we got 5%. Last year, we got 7%, no bonus. And this year, we were asking for the 7.5% with no bonus because highly effective teachers got 7.5% with the bonus.
What I was asking was, what was PBA asking? I understand after the
At
settlement.
the impasse hearing, 7.5%.
That was in 2022?
In 2022, we didn't go to impasse.
What did you ask for in 2022 is what I'm asking you.
That was 2 years ago. I know we got 5%.
All right. So last year you asked for 7.5?
Last year we got 7%, which is what we asked for.
All right. And this year you're asking for what?
7%, well, we're accepting the magistrate's recommendation, 7.5%, no bonus.
All right. So do you anticipate asking for 7 again next year?
I haven't even talked about it with my representatives. We look at market trends, and that hasn't even been a topic of discussion because we're still at impasse here, and we have another impasse with insurance. So honestly, the reps run the show, and we look at market standards and the fact that you're so down in staffing.
So as far as in regard to the public interest, so how does the increase that you're seeking compare to what other agencies in Palm Beach County have sought year over year?
Honestly, it's still lower. It's much lower because we're seeing starting pay in the mid 70,000s up into the low 80s, and that's not even like the district's chart shows only minimum hourly rates. That's not, and this was discussed in length in the hearing, that doesn't take into account the step plans that we see at other places. That doesn't take into account longevity, none of those extra benefits like more leave time, COLAs.
Well, what I'm at, so I don't like to speak in ambiguity. So you all do this, both sides do this on a much more regular basis than me. So I need it to be explained to me like a 5-year-old. So, for example, I believe it was you, Attorney Mendoza, mentioned PBSO's starting salary or current salary. So what is the increase in PBSO starting salary this year as compared to last year?
Their increase this year versus last year,
Yeah.
PBSO versus the district.
No, their personal. So whatever they paid their employees, deputies last year, how much has it increased this calendar
Well,
year?
we don't do reopeners at PBSO like we do here. I'm constantly bargaining here. At PBSO, I think they got 13 or 16% over 3 years. That's what brings them up right now from 72 or 73 starting to around 84 in the next 3 years.
So that basically, my quick math says that's roughly 5% increase, roughly. 16% divided by 3 is 5.3? Is that fair?
No, I don't think that's
divided
right.
by
It's
3?
staggered. They'll get less this year and more than the second 2 years.
All right. This is a term of art you use, Attorney Mendoza. I'm not familiar with it. High risk. You said PBA is the only high risk department, if you will. Can you define high risk for me, please?
Sure. Well, when we say it, we're referring to our police officers, our first responders, and it also refers to FRS, because I think one of the main concerns with bargaining is that with a high-risk unit, you have a higher multiplier.
But what does it mean to be first responders are considered high risk. That's a high risk profession, you're saying? Okay. Now, as far as Chief Mooney, I heard you indicate that she's great at what she does. Did I hear her correctly in regard to her recommendation that 5% would be reasonable for this year's increase? Did I hear her correctly?
I think Chief Booney plays a delicate position because she is on the district's bargaining team, but she is a clear proponent of law enforcement officers. So I don't want to put her in the limelight or make her feel uncomfortable, but I think that if she thinks it's fair, but she also testified at the hearing that you have to look at the high risk and also consider that teachers do get pensionable supplements of $10,000 every year. So can't speak to what Chief Mooney thinks, but I can speak to what we're asking for, which is 7.5 to the base.
Pensionable. I heard that mentioned a lot during the PBA's presentation. Who pays the pension at the time of retirement? The district or the state?
Well, what we hear a lot from your side is that they worry about their contribution rate. So they have a higher contribution rate.
Can I turn to staff for the school district? What portion of an officer's pension is paid by the school district?
Ms. Frederick, can you answer that question?
Well, the full amount is paid by the school district. The rate is set at the state level, and then the school district pays it. But am I allowed to answer further? I believe where the discrepancy is coming is why are we proposing a bonus and not have it be recurring? And the reason is because we're using a different funding source. We were using ESSER funds, and those are federal grant funds that have already sunsetted. But we did set aside one-time funds in the general fund so that we would be able to honor that commitment of the bonus that was paid to all other employees. So that's the difference between the funding, because and when you pay a bonus, it's non-recurring and it's not eligible for FRS benefits.
Okay. And Attorney Mendoza, you made reference to the fact that some of the departments that were listed in Exhibit 1, or I forget which exhibit was listed by the district's attorneys during its presentation, but you stated that some of those departments were not, quote, fully accredited. So apples to apples for me, because this is not a space I'm in on a regular basis. Which of those departments are fully accredited?
I think that question, Joe, you know the answer to that question, right? I think there might be only 2 or 3 fully accredited school police departments across the state of Florida. So like, I don't know if Pinellas was, I don't have the chart in front of me or on me.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. What I thought I read was a presentation in regard to how the district pays its officers in comparison to officers paid by other local law enforcement agencies.
I don't know
Did
if I
misread that?
I don't know if I understand your question. I was referring to the Chapter 447 factors that the magistrate had to refer to, which is local market standards and peculiarities of the job.
So you were referring to other school districts who may have law enforcement
That
agents.
was in my exhibit, so I wasn't referring to other school districts. I was just noting that many are not accredited. You have to go through a lot of accreditation requirements to be a fully accredited police department, and I do know that Palm Beach County School Police Department is one of the few fully accredited school PDs in the district.
You want to jump
Yeah,
in on
Joe,
that,
do you
Ms.
want to
LaPaul?
answer? I don't know.
Hello? Yeah. So a lot of these school districts are located all over the state, so the cost of living is completely different. So a state trooper that works in Sarasota, where there's a Sarasota School Police Department, it makes different money than if they work in Palm Beach, the same job.
Sure.
Yeah, the accreditation requirements is equal to like the sheriff's office. Like, we have to have, meet certain requirements, and it takes a lot to become accredited. So a lot of them are pretty much officers that are not, departments that are not accredited. But the bigger factor, I think, is the cost of living increase and where they live, the supplements they get depending on where they live in the state. You can't compare a police department, even a sheriff's office. You can't compare the sheriff's office here in Palm Beach County to Okeechobee County. It's two different salaries, it's
I
two
agree. Let's
different
put a
costs
pin
of
in that.
living.
Did I misread the exhibit, Attorneys Williams and Middleton? I thought that you were showing, I thought I saw a slide that compared our district officers' pay to other officers inside of Palm Beach County. Did I misread one of the exhibits?
No, there was one exhibit that talked about the district salary compared to other school districts with police officers. There was an additional one that talks about the salaries for Palm Beach County school districts versus other municipalities within our area.
Yeah, so let me follow up very quickly, Ms. Williams. So how does our officers' pay compare to the pay of other officers here in Palm Beach County?
Okay. Mr. Mitchell, can you take that question?
Yes, and thank you. That's Exhibit 2.
Okay.
So if you look at Exhibit 2, it shows that's our local comparator group. The other exhibit, just to clear up the confusion, it didn't state anything about accreditation of the agency. It stated that those were sworn certified officers. So we're compared to other state
Just to save
public
time,
schools that
everybody,
have
I'm not
sworn
concerned about the other agencies outside of Palm Beach
Yes, sir.
County. I really just want to know about Palm Beach County law enforcement agencies and how we pay in that regard to Mr. LaPoe's position, apples to apples, cost of living in Palm Beach. I want to know how our officers are paid in comparison to, say, City of West Palm Beach, PBS. So that's what I was asking Attorney Mendoza.
I
So
think I missed.
Yes, sir, that's Exhibit
do
2.
that for me, sir. I'd appreciate it.
That's Exhibit 2, sir.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I see several board members looking for the exhibits to the board. The parties and their counsel came prepared with their own presentations, of which I would not have had a copy. So I would ask that the parties, if you have exhibits that you showed during your presentations, can you please put that up for the board so that they can follow along with what the testimony is?
It's up on,
Yeah.
Okay, if our IT can put the slide up, apparently it is showing on their computers, it's just not showing up here on the board.
Not showing on the computer.
So you can pull that up as you, I want to wrap up my query because I'm taking up more than enough time as it is. Representative Officer Lynch, in regard to public interest, I thought I heard you mention that there was an AR-15 pull from Bear Lakes Middle School. Can you give me a timeline as to when that actually happened?
March of 2017, or 2018.
Okay. You made me nervous for a minute.
I said it was over my 7.5 years
Sure.
that I've taken.
All right, and then you also made reference to, again, that there are some officers who have worked 20 to 25 years and they, I guess, accrue over $1 million in salary. Did I follow you correctly during your speech?
I never said that, but.
That was
Retire
me.
as millionaires,
That was
what
me.
does that mean?
No,
The
That was
sheriff's
you?
office, yeah.
I misspoke.
Yeah.
I apologize, sir. Yes.
Example, yeah, the sheriff's office, they have a step, they have a cost of living increase, they have, which is significant. It's not hourly wage, it's yearly salary. You know, that's what they take home. And when they work 25 years and retire, they retire millionaires.
So their salaries are increasing by what, 3% a year?
No, it's more like 10 between COLA, the actual negotiated price, and then the step.
They get a COLA and then they get their step raise and then they have a career officer program as well.
All right, so. Because, no, I was just looking at the number, even if you were to work 25 years at 53K, you would, and if you were taxed at 30%, you would have about 927, almost $1 million at that. So I'm not the most mathematical person, but I was listening and that's what I heard. But I appreciate both parties for what you all presented, and I'm gonna cease with my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Whitfield, you no longer want to speak? Okay, so that will bring us to Mr. Barbieri.
Excuse me. Officer Lynch, I take offense to your comment that this board has disrespected our police officers and that the only reason policemen are in our district is because we're mandated to have you here. That is not true. You were here before Stoneman Douglas. This board has always respected the police officers, especially me, since I was one of you. So your remark was highly offensive to me. You know, since I've been on this board, I've lobbied for you guys to get a take-home vehicle. All of you will get vests paid for. Now you have a uniform allowance. We paid for a new radio system. Year-round, I worked closely with the superintendent to make sure all officers had the opportunity to work year-round so that your salary is competitive with other agencies in Palm Beach County. So I find your comment offensive that this board has disrespected you and the only reason you're here is because we have to have you here. That is so far from being true. This board has always, 16 years, this board has always respected our police officers and done everything we can to make sure you guys get everything you possibly need to make you safe and be able to live here and work here in Palm Beach County. That's all I have.
Mr. Barbieri, you through?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you. Thank you, and maybe each attorney can answer this. With the overtime and the comp time, is there a process within our school district, and maybe PBA, you know this answer too, that we have a set of rules so that when we actually ask someone to work overtime or as they're using comp time, it's a process where we're not actually overtaxing anyone. I recognize people do need to be home with their families and they have children and want to do what's what. But I'm thinking there is a system here that we don't really overtax our people and we try to work it through an equitable process. So can anybody help me with that?
It's set forth in the CBA. They have to schedule it by a certain date and it even categorizes like when you should or should not request it.
If I might, I don't think that was the question that was asked. I think the question is about how we staff officers for comp time. Chief Mooney, are you able to answer that question?
Yes, primarily it is voluntary. I can tell you as our staffing has improved, the voluntariness of that has improved also. When we don't have coverage and we have to order somebody to stay, or to come to work because we have to have coverage of some sort, that's where you get into the, time and a half compensatory time at time and a half rate. A lot of the details in the overtime that we're discussing here, it's 50-50 kind of with those lease details, completely voluntary. If it doesn't get filled, then the schools have the opportunity to hire an outside agency to come in and do that. We like to keep our school events covered by our school officers, and that's our priority. But primarily, the officers sign up voluntarily for it. There is occasion where we have to order them in, but that has gone down tremendously over the past couple of years.
Yeah, that was my concern because I do agree that people do want to be home with their families and there should be an equitable process. Some people love to work overtime. They are number one in wanting to do that. So I just want to make sure that we're not imposing on someone who truly wants to be home with their family on any given night, and there is a process. Thank you so much.
Ms. Bernard?
I just
I just want to remind everyone, as you're using the microphones, please make sure that your red light is on so that we're getting a clear record. Chief Mooney and Ms. Andrews, we pretty much have it down up here, how to make sure our microphone is on, but please just recall to do that as you're speaking so we can make sure we get everybody on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. And so before I go to Mr. Ferguson, I do want to just say that, and I think I can speak on behalf of the board, that we truly do appreciate all that the PBA does for our district, for our students, your mentors to our students. And so I do want to let you know that that is how we feel. We have to make decisions today based upon the public interest in the district as a whole. So I'll now turn the microphone over back to Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and that actually is what I wanted to briefly speak to. I guess first, PBA, Attorney Mendoza. So from the standard of the public interest, and I definitely echo everything that Chair Brill has said in terms of the necessity for law enforcement, highly trained law enforcement officers to be at all of our 180 plus schools and other properties for sure. But when you take into consideration that we have the SEIU, the CTA, I think there are a few other bargaining organizations up there as well. And you also realize that the most important part of our public education system is our education of our students. Help me understand how the 7% increase for you won't have a ripple effect to the other organizations, and how that ultimately would not limit or meter the overall quality of the public education of our students. If you can answer that question.
Sure, and I don't know how to turn my microphone on. So.
It's on.
Oh, it's on,
Yeah.
okay. So I guess I could just put it back to you that the referendum funds, like, what's to say that all the units wouldn't want those? Because those are up to $10,000 per person per year that's pensionable. But we, in bargaining, are very, very flexible, and we proposed a number of different options. If you look through the brief, I think we proposed like 4 or 5 different options. So that's why we didn't propose a step plan, because we don't want to overwhelm the system. Again, I have to note that the district admitted it had the funding. I think we're looking at, honestly, less than $500,000. My math was $375, but I know that they do have to consider FRS. But I just would like to keep building up the police force, because I don't have all the numbers in front of me on how short the other units are, but you're still down 50 to 60 officers. And if we had more than 30 minutes, you would hear that they're still scrambling every day to fill each school at minimum staffing. So that would be my response, is that the CBAs aren't identical. You know, we aren't necessarily asking for the referendum supplements. We just want to keep building on the starting pay and giving good base wage increases, because those are preferred over the bonuses and attract more police officers, and good ones, not just for a training ground.
But isn't the number of open spots, if you will, in terms of student resource officers here in Palm Beach County, isn't it less than it was, say, last year, at the beginning of last school year?
Honestly, our last public records request, I think, was you had about 10 more officers. So you're not losing as quickly. Like the year before, you lost 50 in 1 year. I think this year, Chief Mooney said you lost 20, but you're still just, you only went up 10 officers. You're still down around 60.
To the district staff, are we losing or gaining? Have we lost or gained officers in terms of what we had in August of 23 vis-a-vis August of 2024?
I'm going to turn that over to Chief Mooney.
We've gained. We're at probably about a net gain of 10. What's interesting with our force is we have a lot of people that are not here for their first police job. So there's a lot of intangibles, and sometimes people change their mind during the middle of a season or a year and say, you know, I'm ready to actually be retired. So it's not as structured as, say, a municipality where somebody they're coming in and they're geared up for doing 20 or 30 years. Right. Here, if we can get our seasoned people to stay for 10 years, we're doing great. So there's just a lot of turnover, but we've brought a lot more people in over the past 2 years. So we are gaining ground.
So Chief, are you representing that even going 2 years back, we actually are reducing the number of vacancies we have in terms of our law enforcement officers?
Yes.
All right. And does anyone from staff know, Superintendent Burke or anyone, where are we in regard to our vacancies on the teacher side, percentage-wise?
We have about a 2% vacancy. vacancy rate.
All right, and so then law enforcement, our percentage vacancy right now is at what?
Well,
18, I think.
the budget, the staffing for the police department is higher than I believe they actually need. I guess I'd refer to Chief Mooney on whether or not schools are being able to be covered by our officers.
Yes, at the beginning of last year, we did not have a school police officer or school district police officer in every school. This year we do. When the comment is made that we're scrambling every day, the scramble is to make sure that we have every single school covered and people have the opportunity to take a day off if they need a day off. They have the opportunity to go to training if they want to go take additional training.
Yes.
We try to plan that in advance, which requires us to sometimes take a secondary officer off of a campus and reassign them somewhere else. So the scrambling has to do with making sure that we have every single school covered every day. So it's more the manipulation of where the manpower is going than trying to find a body.
Understood.
We
Thank
have
you.
240 officers right now,
240 in the
182 schools.
And the target, if we had full 0% vacancy, would be what, 3 something?
315.
You somewhere around there?
That's in a complete ideal state, I think. It's not required, though.
Sure, I understand. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. I do want to start off by just thanking you all for being here today and taking so much time out of your schedule to come and to share your thoughts with us. We really appreciate that. I'm very grateful for the service of the police officers in our district. You guys take care of my own daughter, so that is my most important thing, is to get her home every day. And that's a commitment that I think we all up here have made to our residents, that we are going to make sure that they're safe every day. And make sure your children come home. So that being said, I just want to really say thank you for being here. One of the questions that I had just come across in this, there's so many different pockets of the way you get paid in the police department. It seems excessively confusing to me when I was going through it with our staff about the ways that, there's overtime, and then there's non-contract day compensation, and then you have extra duty days. Is this normal in all departments throughout the, county and the state, or maybe this through Chief Mooney could
So that's a
potentially
Chief Mooney question.
answer that? Thank you.
No, it's not the same. The district has different language as far as like even a contract day. Most municipalities, you work 40 hours a week, 365 days a year. You have your weeks, or your 52 weeks a year. Here, the way the calendars, you're negotiating a calendar every year. You have the opportunity to be a 12-month employee, to where you have 250 days that you're going to work in a year, as opposed to 206. If an officer who works 206 needs to come in on a day off, whether it's required training or to help with coverage, they have to be compensated, but that's all been negotiated. I can tell you it was very confusing for me coming in the door to try to figure out the different ways that they get paid. So to consolidate that would be wonderful, but the way the systems are set up, it's working, but it is confusing.
So thank you. That's very helpful. So as we go forward in these negotiations, maybe that's something that we can look at, obviously not for this time, but for in the future. It's not even on the question for today, but I think that might make it more straightforward in pay, so we can truly compare better. The other thing I really wanted to ask, there's been a lot of talk about the referendum pay, and I can completely understand your side, feeling that you should be receiving referendum pay if teachers are getting it. Of course, there's the whole take-home car situation, so that's not fair the other direction. But to our staff, is it true, I think it's true, that we spend all of the referendum pay that we get every year, or do we have extra left? How does that work out when we've parsed it out at the 1,000, 5,000, and 10,000 to our teachers? Is there any referendum pay left at the end of that? How does that work?
So I'll throw that to Ms. Frederick.
So when there is an increase in the referendum funds available, they are allocated for items that are within the referendum. So that was why we were able to take the school police pay from 2 years ago and add that to the referendum. So it was a full $1.5 million of their increase was included in the referendum. The referendum is now fully expended. We did have a carryover from the previous year, but we have, since that is one-time funds, spent it on one-time initiatives, all within the security area. Police, new radios being one of those initiatives. But as of today, I'll be reporting out actually on Friday to the Independent Referendum Oversight Committee that the funds are expected to be fully expended at the end of the year, including those one-time carryover funds.
Thank you very much for the answer to the question.
If I may, something you said about cars, that's an industry standard. All police departments give a car. And also Miami-Dade Police Department gives full referendum to their school police officers and a take-home car.
Well, and just to be fair, I was very supportive of you getting the extra cars. I think that it has an additional benefit of showing the community the police presence when you're even not visible and you're inside a campus, having the police car out front. So that's something that I think it adds to the security at our schools, and I am very glad that you have that. But as we're comparing different employee groups, you know, transportation to the Glades and that additional supplement, I feel like maybe already covered by the idea that you have cars that we're paying for and the funding with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair McQuinn.
Thank you. I wasn't going to make some comments, but I thought, yeah, this is my last school board meeting, so of course I have to. I do want to support Mr. Barbieri's comments about the mandating. Having been an assistant principal and a principal in this school district, I don't know how long we've had our own police force, but it's been at least 35 years. So it's nothing about a mandate. I can also tell you that very recently, I told a couple of friends, I know that our school police officers would literally, I think I used 99%, would literally put themselves in the line of fire to protect any staff member and any student. I can tell you at Palm Beach Gardens High School 27 years ago, I did have a police officer do that. So I know it. I absolutely know that that is your training to protect us and our students. In terms of the percent of vacancies, you can't now, this former math teacher speaking, you cannot look at something in the 300s and something in the 11,000s and compare percentages. So I think looking at percentages in terms of vacancies is, you're not comparing apples and apples at all. And finally, scrambling. There's not a school in Palm Beach County that doesn't literally scramble every day to cover our classrooms because we don't, by the time you get to middle school hours, there aren't enough substitutes to go around. But again, I have done nothing ever. I could not have done Palm Beach Gardens High School without our school police officers. It would not have been possible. It also wouldn't have been possible without our teachers in front of the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Andrews, you have about 30 seconds.
Well, just a quickie. And I was looking at the West Area Supplement, just something in specifics. I do want to say I see the offices everywhere, especially in the West. And I'm so thankful because they do such a great job all over Palm Beach County. But this may go to one of the attorneys or to the chief. When we're hiring and building a pool of offices to be in different spots, is that just a blanket hire and they're placed anywhere? Or is it a situation where, you know, you're trying to find the best fit for the particular location? So I would just like to know what your process is.
We'll allow you to just answer that question.
We're always going to try to find the best fit, the best fit for the principals, for the officer. When we talk about the officers that are out in the Glades, if you ask any one of them, every single one of them wants to be out in the Glades. Whether it's because of a stipend or because that's just where that's where they want to be. That's where they want to do their school policing. We do try to take into account where people live. Like if somebody's living up in Port St. Lucie, I try not to assign them to Boca, and vice versa. If they live in Broward County, I try not to assign them to Jupiter unless that's their preference. So we would take into consideration also annually we do what would be kind of shift bids or assignment bids. So based on seniority, that the senior officers would have the opportunity to request specific schools. So we take all of that into account. Throughout the year, if we bring new officers in, sometimes they may get plugged into a school that they may only be in until we get around to those assignment bids at the end of the school year. But we try not to move them around a whole lot during the school year. But we take multiple things into consideration.
Thank you, Chief Mooney. So I'm now going to turn the meeting back over to Ms. Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll now discuss with the board and the parties voting. To the board, there must be a vote. The vote will be recorded. When voting, the board chairperson will ask if there is a motion to either grant or deny each of the rejected recommendations of the special magistrate's recommendations. A board member will then move to either grant or deny each properly filed rejection to the recommendation. There must be a second to the motion. The board must consider with particularity its public interest reasons for granting or denying the rejection of the special magistrate's recommendation. The foregoing procedures should be followed for each rejection to the recommendation. Following the impasse hearing, a written agreement shall be drafted by the superintendent and the association, which incorporates issues agreed to by the parties, the board's vote on the rejections, and the disputed impasse issues which were resolved by the board at the impasse hearing. The agreement shall be signed by the superintendent and the association and submitted to the agency, the school board, and its employees for ratification. If after the impasse hearing, the agreement is not ratified by the parties, the school board's resolution of the disputed impasse issues shall take effect as of today, November 6, 2024, for the remainder of the year. I will now turn the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. So the board is now going to rule on each and every properly filed rejection. To make it easier for the board members to follow, I'm going to read the rejection number and a little description so that then we can get a motion. So rejection 1 is regarding CBA provision 17.1B. I, compensatory time. The superintendent rejected the special magistrate's recommendation to allow officers to carry up to 60 hours of compensatory time to the next year. Do we have a motion? Board members, motion by Mrs. Whitfield. Do I have a second to the motion? Second by Mr. Ferguson. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, if we can just have the motion in either to accept or deny, so if we could have Mrs. Whitfield go back and state her motion on the record, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. For item number 1, I would like to accept the superintendent's recommendation to reject the carryover of compensatory time to the next year.
Mr. Ferguson, does your second hold?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I'm sorry? Oh, you're opposed? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, a motion carries 6 in favor, 1 opposed, with Mr. Ferguson in opposition. Okay, please make sure that you motion to me. Okay, thank you.
I see that some of your board members, can you repeat what the motion just passed? Or if we could have the board clerk, is that what we?
Do you want to repeat that
Excuse me,
for us?
Madam Chair, my question for parliamentary rule, can a person that makes a second on the motion then vote against it? If he,
That's a question for you, Ms. Bernard.
Thank you. No, you cannot. Thank you, Mr. Barbieri.
So we need to have another second before we can go further with our vote. So we have a motion by Mrs. Whitfield, a second by Mrs. Andrews. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Vice Chair McQuinn?
This one, and I am agreeing in granting the superintendent's rejection, primarily in terms of comp time, compensatory time, because it makes it very difficult if compensatory time is built up to make sure that we're staffed to protect, and I'm talking specifically to school centers. It makes it difficult from year to year to be able to do that. So I think that is very important in terms of the public interest, in terms of the safety of our students and staff.
Thank you. So those in favor? Okay, those opposed? Motion carries 6-1 with Mr. Ferguson opposing. I shut off my mic. To rejection number 2, provision 17.11, extra duty. The superintendent rejected the special magistrate's recommendation to compensate officers for their overtime rate if it's greater than $52.50. Do I have a motion? Mrs. Whitfield, please state your motion.
Thank you. I'd also like to make a comment on this one before I make my motion.
The comment, Mrs. Whitfield, has to follow the motion.
Okay, then we'll work on that. So this one, I also want to accept the superintendent's recommendation to reject the recommendation and accept an increase of pay to $52.50 with a minimum of 3 hours.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by, is that a second, Mr. Ferguson? Any discussion, Mrs. Whitfield?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment on this one. This is something that only because of the issue with the lease do I want to reject it. I think that it makes more sense to streamline as we go forward. So I think as we go forward, we really need to discuss how we can make the pay through the police department make more sense. But I understand the difficulty that it would cause for the schools to have a lease item where it varied depending on which officer came in and actually did that work. So we're talking the extra duty rate at $52.50. That's the only reason that I want to not go forward with this for you all.
I don't know if I'm allowed to speak, but can I just clarify that we're talking about leases? Because I think that people use the terms in different ways. Because right now, they are paid through overtime for extra duty, like after the school day, which Chief Mooney can probably talk about. So I think that some people use the term in regards to leases and other people use it in regards to overtime. So I would propose just striking that whole.
I would say that
Thank you.
for me today, I would like to see that potentially be in next year's discussion and that we just move forward with this today. But I could see this as being an item that we should be discussing further and making this. The amount of back and forth, and if you're here on this day, you get paid one thing. If you're here on that day, you get paid a different thing. That just seems very confusing to me. So this is just me speaking. So I think we should clear that up for next time.
Any further discussion? Oh, thank you. Nobody else did. Mr. Barbieri.
Could the CFO explain how, is there a way to compensate, so is there a way to build the contract for leases so that, because I'd like to see the officers get the higher of the two, if they can without, but I understand that that's a problem. When the lease is signed, it says what the hourly rate will be for the officer. Is there a way to build the lease, maybe you should ask the general counsel, is there a way to build that contract for the leases so that the school, so that the officer that's assigned there, whatever officer it is, if his overtime pay would be higher than $52.50, that he would still get it, so that the school doesn't get stuck with an extra bill? Is there a way to do that so that the school knows in advance that this is going to be the cost if we have this here, and the maximum could be whatever that maximum is, but there's a range that says the range is going to be, these officers at this range get this amount, but if you get one of the officers that happens to be assigned to this, they're going to, your obligation is going to be higher. Is there a way to do that? Because I'd like to see them get the higher if they can.
Since it is voluntary, you don't know which officer is going to be the one who's going to actually be working the lease.
Right.
And then it also needs to be collected in advance, and there could be changes in between as to who actually works. So I do believe that there would just be some logistical challenges in implementing that, to have the lessee pay the actual rate, because it would be an after-the-fact adjustment. But it's something that we could look into on a, as recommended going forward, whether there's a possibility.
Okay, yeah,
I just
I
find
won't be
it-
here next year, but I would like you to try and work on that, because I think the officers should get paid, whatever that officer's rate is, and there's got to be a way to work that into the contract, so if an officer volunteers to take a position and he's paid more than $52.50, that he gets that, gets that rate, if that's what his normal rate would be. So if you guys could work on that somehow. I don't believe we have the authority at this point to do anything with that. It's either accept or reject. There's no modification.
Okay, and so I will just add to that through the superintendent, that staff, you hear what we're saying for the next time round in negotiations prior to take these comments into consideration that you've heard now from Mrs. Whitfield and Mr. Barbieri. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So the rejection to provision 20.3 is divided into two subsections. We will first address rejection 3 regarding the supplemental pay for detectives and officers of the Emergency Services Unit and field training. The superintendent rejected the special magistrate's recommendation to increase the supplement by 5%. Board members, do I have a motion? Anybody with a motion? Mrs. Whitfield?
Thank you. On this one, I feel like we could go with the special magistrate's recommendation. So my motion would be to accept the special magistrate's recommendation of increasing the supplement by 5%.
And is there a second? I will second it. Okay, any discussion?
Madam Chair, I think you need to pass the gavel in order to second it.
I'm sorry, I passed the gavel over. Okay?
Is there a second?
Mrs.
I'm so
Chairwoman Brill.
Excuse me. Chairwoman
We're new to
Brill
this.
made the second to Ms. Whitfield's, yes, thank you, motion. And so now are we ready for, is there anyone for discussion? No. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Brill has something she wants to
So
say in
yes, so for discussion, I actually was prepared to tell you that I've reviewed all the documents very thoroughly. And first, I want to express my appreciation for your accepting of many of the recommendations from the special magistrate. The current supplement is at $4,000, and PBA bargained for an increase by $1,000 per year to bring the supplement to $5,000. The special magistrate's recommendation is that we increase the supplement by 5%, which would bring the annual supplement to approximately $4,200 or less dollars. That's less than a $200 increase, or maximum a $200 increase. So based upon my review of the issues and in consideration of the public interest, I do support the special magistrate's recommendation, and therefore I do support this motion. Any further discussion? Mr. Barbieri?
I agree with you, Ms. Brill. Chairwoman Brill, it's not a significant amount, and if it helps the officers meet their requirements, their living requirements, I would vote in favor of that also.
Any other discussion? Mrs. Andrews?
Yes, when I look at the assignment pay for the detectives and the emergency service unit and the field training officers, those are the leaders. And as we looked at the money, it's hopefully, at this point in time, it's not going to be of a significant impact in the budget. So I can go along with that. And I do commend the leaders that do the training and the emergency services for our safety.
Thank you. Any other discussion, board members? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, rejection 3.5 is regarding assignment of pay for officers of the training unit. The superintendent rejected the special magistrate's recommendation to establish a new supplement of $1,000 for the training unit. Do we have a motion now for rejection 3.5? Mrs. Whitfield?
Yes, I'd like to accept the rejection of the superintendent for this recommendation to establish a supplement of $1,000.
Okay, do we have a second? Second by Ms. Ayala. Any discussion? Okay, why don't we have you all press, because there's multiple people with their hands up. I'll start with Vice Chair McQuinn.
Thank you. And mine is a question, if we can do that now. How many positions are in the training unit?
Yes, you can.
Okay, Chief Mooney, can you talk to that?
We currently have 3 full-time, and then we have adjunct instructors throughout the year, but we have 3 that are assigned to the unit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that brings us to Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. My reason behind this, and I just want to clarify if this is my reason, that Chief Mooney had said that this would be something that could be very confusing due to different training in different groups. So would you clarify that that is true? If we were to accept this, I did propose rejecting it. So can you clarify that this would be a difficulty?
The difficulty is that's a little confusing in how I don't know how it came across. When we continue, we have multiple units that have a specialty. If every time we create a specialized unit, there are things that go along with that sometimes. There may be actually other perks to that position. But if we additionally give extra money to those positions, they're very coveted, is number one. But number two, people don't go to those positions just for the supplement. So if we just continue to add supplements to everything, we might as well give everybody a supplement.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews?
That was my concern as to how many more, even though you only have just this small amount now, it could grow. So that was my biggest concern. It sounds like it could just very well grow now. I don't know if there could be some provisions as we bring it back to the table. We're coming back to the table next year, that we can look at this again, because I do believe in training and making sure that people get as much training as possible so they can be the best of whatever they can be. So that would be my concern, that this could grow. Is that correct, Chief?
Yeah, and I want to be cautious to make sure that you understand that we really are fortunate with the people that we have in the positions, especially in our training unit. But we have a lot of very talented people within the department. And if every time I try to establish a new unit, we've got to throw a supplement on top of it, I'm not going to be able to continuously establish units. So I think it is a better discussion point for maybe next year to try to make it make sense a little bit more across the board.
Okay, Vice Chair McQuinn?
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Mooney, for that. Initially, I was going to say that, again, I have to go to school centers, but we do give supplements to department chairs, and depending upon the size, co-department chairs, coaching supplements. So we have a ton of supplements within the instructional ranks. However, it makes sense to me. I don't have enough information about all of the different units, but I do think it's something that you want to look at next year with more data regarding that. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-1 with Mr. Ferguson in opposition. Okay, that.
I'm sorry. The motion was to, I think I may have.
To approve, do you want to read the motion back? Yes, to approve the rejection.
I'm in favor.
Okay, so again, we'll re-vote. So all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That brings us to rejection number 4, provision 20.5, salary. The special magistrate recommended that the officer salary schedule be increased by 7.5%. The superintendent rejected this recommendation and recommended that the board accept the superintendent's proposal of a 5% salary increase plus a one-time bonus of $1,500 or a 3% increase, whichever is greater. Do we have a motion on rejection number 4? Motion by Mrs. Andrews. Please state your motion.
Yes, I'd like to make the motion to affirm that we will reject the superintendent, the recommendation, and accept the superintendent's position of 5% increase to salary plus one-time bonus of $1,500 or 3% increase, whichever is greater.
We have a motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Vice Chair McQuinn. Any discussion? Mr. Barbieri?
Yes,
Oh, I'm
ma'am.
sorry, excuse me. General Counsel wants to comment.
I know we're kind of throwing around accept, grant, and that I just want to make sure for the record in the terminology, if Mrs. Andrews could just clarify, for the record, so that the board members know what the motion is. I think
we reject the recommendation and accept the superintendent's position of a 5% increase to salary plus a one-time bonus of $1,500 or 3% increase, whichever is greater.
So for clarification, you are asking the board to accept the superintendent's rejections on this point, just for the record and for clarification, Ms. Andrews?
No, we are rejecting the recommendation and accept the second part of it.
Okay, so rejecting the magistrate's recommendation on this one. Got it. Is the board clear on that? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mrs. Andrews, second was Vice Chair McQuinn. Mr. Barbieri?
Yes. If there was any way we could afford to do this, I'd want to do this for the officers, to give them more money. But based on the fact that the state of Florida seems to have every priority in the world other than funding education and giving us the money we need, you know, we just can't take a chance that if we put this kind of increase in place, that we're going to be able to pay it in the future. Plus, once we do this, all the other unions are going to come forward and say, well, what about us? So, I mean, last year we were generous with the police, and then this year was for the teachers, and hopefully, you know, we can continue. But I believe the other unions are getting 4% this year, and we're giving the officers 5%. So we are giving them more. I wish we could give you all more. I really do, because you certainly deserve it, and especially the younger people that come here to work, the young guys and gals that come here as new officers, and, you know, it's difficult to raise a family here, and I'm sure you can't afford to buy a house unless your significant other works and helps pay the bills. So if there was any way that the board could afford to do this, certainly I would be in favor of it. But I've looked at everything. I've met with the CFO. I've talked to the superintendent. It's too risky for us to give an increase like this. It's continuing. The fact that you're getting the $1,500 or the 3%, whichever is greater, I realize it doesn't go into your pension, but that's one-time money, so we don't have to worry about whether the state's going to give us money next year or not. We know we have the money this year, so we want you to have it. Hopefully next year we'll find a way to give you a better pay raise than we can give you this year, but we have to take into account the entire district. And as somebody said here on the district side, is we only have one budget, and it's got to pay not only employees, but it's got to take care of all the other things, transportation and the food service and everything else. So although I certainly respect all of you, and I wish we could pay you more, at this point, I just can't support a higher pay raise than what the superintendent is offering you at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Barbier. And I want to chime in and tell you that we are looking at our legislative priorities this afternoon, and I would hope that PBA would join with us in this session to go for more funding for, we know we have school safety down there, but for the salaries, because again, similar to Mr. Barbieri, I wish that we could. We've got to get more money from the state because we want to be able to pay better. Mrs. Whitfield.
Similarly to Mrs. Brill and to Mr. Barbieri, I just wanted to say that this is not what we want to do by any means. And I want to say that I understand Palm Beach County has become a ridiculously expensive place to live. You know, everything has gotten more expensive. We're all experiencing that. So I think that this is, you know, it's been our goal as a school board to give as many raises as we possibly can, as much as we possibly can. That's the direction we always go to staff with, is to find out how we can find additional funding. I do think you have a very valid concern with the referendum, and so I think that as we go forward planning the next referendum, which always comes up, this should be included in it as well, because, you know, we say safety and security and teacher pay, and so I think you know, spelling that out in a future referendum would be something that I would love to do. And I really am sorry that I don't see how we can afford this right now. Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you. I spent quite a bit of time working with legal on this, and I just really, truly believe that when I look at the principal and I look at the offices in the school, it's almost equivalent. I mean, to be able to have security and academics moving in our schools, we couldn't do it without you. And this is why, you know, we really need to figure out how to do it. And this is why in the past we did come up with a higher percentage that that was more than what we gave our teachers. And we're continually looking at that. And so I just want to be on record to say that I really appreciate your service, and we're not over with. You're going to come back to the table with us again, and hopefully we can find some additional funding to do better than what we're doing today. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That brings us to rejection number 5, which is regarding CBA Provision 20.9 West Area Supplement. The superintendent rejected the special magistrate's recommendation to increase the supplement by 5%. Do I have a motion now for rejection number 5? Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. I motion that we accept the superintendent's rejection of this recommendation, that we make no change in the supplement for people out west.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Whitfield. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Ayala. Any discussion? So before I turn this over to Mrs. McQuinn, I'm going to vote against the.
Madam Chair, there's discussion.
I know. I'm discussing.
Okay.
Okay, mine doesn't light up, so when I press it, it doesn't show you. Change for next time. Okay, so anyway, getting back to that, I am going to vote against this motion because I don't agree with the district's position as it was presented. So I am going to vote in favor of what the special magistrate recommended by voting in opposition. And now, Mrs. McQuinn.
Thank you. And everyone knows I read and reread and make notes of everything, but I don't remember this particular data point. So increasing the supplement by the West Area supplement by 5% through General Counsel to staff, what does that look like in terms of our teacher supplement or any of our employees, the West Area supplement? What does that look like?
I'm going to turn it over to the parties to respond.
Ms. Frederick, are you able to answer that one?
So the reason why we have the West Area supplement, is that the question for all the other employees, is because other employees do not have a vehicle, and there is a long distance in order to get out to the Glades area. They are not reimbursed for travel and commuting miles. So that is in essence, that is the purpose of the West Area or Glades supplement. So I'm not sure if I answered your
The
question.
CTAs is higher than the PBAs right now. I'm trying to pull the exact numbers, but I don't have them.
So let me follow that up while you're doing that. Have we increased our other employees' West Area supplement in recent years?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Barbieri?
Yeah, question for district. Maybe it's not a question, it's a statement. I understand that it takes longer. I guess this is to Chief Mooney, if I can, through the council. Chief, do the officers have a say-so whether they want to work in the Glades area or not? Are they forced to go there if they don't want to take the position?
Everyone that's there right now is there by choice.
Okay, so I guess my point is, I understand it takes longer to drive. I hate driving all the way out there, although I love to help Marcia, Mrs. Andrews with the schools out there, but it does take forever to get there. But I think the difference here is that you all get a car, and the board paid for cars for all of our officers, so you're not paying for gas, and you're not paying for the vehicle. You are paying with your time to drive all the way out there and come back, and I get that. But since you're there by choice, $3,000 supplement that you're currently getting, if you have 0 to 2 years, or the $5,500 for 9+ years with the car and the no gas expense, I think it's fair. So I agree that we should accept the superintendent's rejection of the special magistrate's recommendation, and I will vote against and vote in favor of the motion.
Mrs. Andrews?
And I think all the officers that work in the Glades region, I would like to make a comment that we bring this back. And it may not be monetary, but I just know that the officers that work the Glades do a lot of counseling. I know all of our officers do a lot of counseling, but I see them go above and beyond because of the location, because of the need to sometimes act as a extra layer of support for the children who may not have some of the things that our children have to the east of the Glades. So I really want us to think about what we can do and how we can actually boost this in a way that we can do something even more for those officers, because they truly like being there and they spend the extra time there. And I see them build those beautiful relationships with the children. So I'm going to support the superintendent's recommendation, but I really want us to bring this back to figure out some other kind of way that we can compensate, because it doesn't always have to be about money. Thank you.
Okay, and board members, I'm going to share with you the figures as they were, as Ms. Vice Chair McQuinn was questioning. So currently, the contract calls for, the supplement is for 0 to 2 years, it's $3,000. 2 to 8 years, it's $4,500, and 9+ years, it's $5,500. PBA, when they were bargaining, was asking for 0 to 2 to be $3,750, 3 to 8 to be $4,750, and 9+ to be $575. That's not wrong, it's $5,750, that's a typo. So the magistrate came back, similar to the one where we rejected the superintendent. The magistrate came back with a 5% increase. So what the 5% increase does for this supplement is it takes the 0 to 2, which is $2,000, and raises it, 0 to 2, which is $3,000, it raises it to $3,150. It's $150 for 0 to 2 years. For 3 to 8 years, they're currently at $4,500. It brings it up to $4,725. That's $225, okay? And then for 9+ years, they're currently at $5,500. It brings them up to $5,775. So that's an increase of $275. So we're really looking at a very nominal increase. And for that reason, again, I'm just going to express that I will vote against this. Before I go to Mrs. Andrews, Ms. Bernard wants to say something.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Brill. I now understand the question that you were asking, Mrs. McQuinn, so my apologies. As outlined by Mrs. Brill, that would be the breakdown and comparisons, and I'll just further that by noting that the increase, if you were to go along with the special magistrate, note that in year 9, the PBA would be making more than the teachers. So that's just a note for the board's consideration as well.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Mrs. Andrews.
And that was close to what my question was: how many people were we talking about as we go through this? I think this is prime for bringing back as we get back to the table again, because I still think something has to happen that can just highlight this area.
Okay, Mrs. Whitfield.
Just another question through the attorney to our chief. How many of these officers out in the Glades currently live in the Glades, percentage-wise?
I can't tell you specifically in the Glades. We have some that live west of Palm Beach County. We have some that live north of Palm Beach County, out around the lake area. I think we have about a dozen officers and supervisors that are assigned there right now. Probably about 50% live at least within a 10-mile, 15-mile radius.
Well, I would just say in this item, if the problem is transportation, we just talked about how you try your best not to have people move from Boca to Jupiter and Jupiter to Boca, but that happens. It's a long drive, same long drive. It's 50 miles by 50 miles in this county. And so if it's just about transportation, I think that it would fit many different schools. If it's about the population, that also those align at different schools as well. There's a lot of schools in my area that have similar challenges to the Glades. So I'm going to remain accepting the superintendent's recommendation on this, because I feel like it is not clear to me that this is a necessity to have people that work there, especially if these are people that live there. In some cases, I understand that they do live in the Glades and work in the Glades. I love that. I love being in my own community as well. So I support that, but I don't think that it deserves an extra supplement. So thank you.
Vice Chair McQuinn.
I am going to ultimately, how do I say this? I'm going to vote to grant the superintendent's, I know this, whatever his recommendation is. I'm going to support his recommendation. Not, but I'm going to tell you my primary reason. It's because of the car, because our other employees don't have a car. And so that's going to be my deciding factor in why I'm voting the way I am.
Mrs. Andrews?
And I'm certainly not trying to say that we're comparing students, different students to different students. We have a lot of students in Palm Beach County that needs a lot of help. But when we think about the region of the Glades, it's a different region where when you come east, we're 40 miles away from Belglade, Pahokee, South Bay, where there's no theaters and many times grocery stores and things that kids have to the east of here. And when I see those officers that give their time out there, I love that we're doing some things for them, but I think we need to come back to the table and think about how we can even uplift it more, because it's a different kind of place. You have to be a great fit and really truly love to be there, or you're not going to be able to be successful. And we want our officers to be successful, to work with our children. I'm going to accept the recommendation from the superintendent, but I really want to bring it back and let's have a different kind of discussion for next year.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries 6-1 with Chairwoman Brill objecting, in opposition. Okay, so that now brings the voting of on all the rejections to a conclusion, and we now need a motion to authorize the parties to draft an agreement that includes the issues agreed to by the parties and the disputed impasse issues resolved at the hearing today based on the rejections and recommendations concerning the impasse. Do I have a motion now to authorize the parties to draft an agreement? Motion by Mr. Barbieri, second by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? All in favor, all opposed, motion carries unanimously. This is going to conclude the impasse hearing today, but I do want to add that I think we had a lot of good takeaways. I think you heard that the board really wants to see some things on the table next year, some discussion. I think that I'm hoping that you got an appreciation of how we feel. I know that I got a deeper appreciation also of how you feel. And so now I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? All in favor, all opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Board members, I'm going to give everybody a 5-minute break, and then we'll be coming back to open up our meeting where we will be going into a closed-door session.